chapter 1040 of the One Piece manga, during the raid of Onigashima at the Battle of the Performance Floor, the Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar Law, and Captain Eustace Kidd were declared the winners after defeating the Yonko Big Mom in an intense death match. To this day, one of my favorite fights in the story, so I figure why don't we have One Piece's most dysfunctional duo face off against every person who's earned the title of Yonko and break down the possibilities, if any, on how they could win a 2v1 match. Because in my opinion, a lot of people really downplay Kid and Law and the victory they achieved against Big Mom, despite both Kaidou and Big Mom acknowledging the strength of the worst generation multiple times. If you like what you see, then by all means check out my other videos I have on the channel and subscribe for more content in the future. Thanks for clicking on this video, and let's go ahead and lay out the rules for this matchup. The rules for this matchup are very simple, and I don't think there should be any disagreements with what I've laid out. Rule number one is that I am not stating anything to be fact with my breakdowns. I'm taking the canon feats Kid and Law have displayed and exploring the possibilities of how they can defeat the other Yonko. Rule 2, we are using Kid and Law during the Egghead arc since that's the latest version of them at the time of recording, and both have shown signs of growth since the end of Wano. Rule 3, both Kid and Law are 100% fresh. I say this only because people forget that neither were fresh entering the fight against Big Mom, who herself basically received 0 damage during Roof Piece. Majority of attacks the supernovas used on the roof were targeted at Kaidou or Big Mom's homies. Big Mom herself was hit once by Law's counter shock, completely unaffected by Kid's punk pistols, as well as unaffected by Law using tack to push her off the roof. Not to mention, at no points will Kid be affected by Hawkins' powers, and as a result, Law won't need to hard carry Kid mid-battle because of it. Rule 4, the latest chapter at the time of recording this video is chapter 1143. We are using the canon forms of each Yonko's appearance in the story and how they canonically fight. It's entirely possible for a few people mentioned to show more strength as the story continues, but for now, these are the metrics we're going with. Like I said, pretty simple, so let's now transition to Law and Kid's first opponent. First on the list is old Whitebeard, and before anyone says it, yes, obviously, Whitebeard in his prime folds Kid and Law badly, but Whitebeard in his prime wasn't a Yonko. As far as we know, the Yonko system was established at an unconfirmed period after Roger's death. We don't ever see Whitebeard operate between the Odin flashback and his time as an old man, so yes, Whitebeard at Marineford is what we're using for the battle. And honestly, I think Kid and Law are catching an easy win here. That's not to say that Whitebeard is just some pushover, but his condition at Marineford is extremely bad, and that's not debatable whatsoever. After Whitebeard is stabbed by Sword, Marco himself states that regardless of how sick Whitebeard was, he should have been able to dodge that strike. Keep in mind, Squard isn't even one of Whitebeard's top commanders like Marco, Vista, and Jozu. It's just a fact he was in bad condition, and although he did have encounters with all the admirals at Marineford, he needed Jozu's help against Aokiji right before he was going to land a strike. He was visibly struggling against Akainu and suffered a heart attack mid-battle, and Kizaru just flat out bullied him. Against Kid and Law, Whitebeard is at a bad disadvantage as well due to their powers. If Whitebeard launches a Quake at Kid, it won't matter if he hits Kid's metal, and any direct strikes against Kid could be avoided because of Law's teleportation. For a guy who's already suffering heart attacks mid-fight, getting hit with Law's Gamma Knife could do massive damage, and unlike Doflamingo's BS plot strings, Whitebeard has no way of recovering from the damage. Because of Roof Piece and the Big Mom fight, we know Law and Kid have enough strength to injure Kaidou and Big Mom in their base forms as well as their amp states, making things harder for Whitebeard. Not trying to be disrespectful at all to Whitebeard, but I don't think neither Kid or Law need to use their awakenings for this fight. Both of them have shown enough attack potency to damage Whitebeard since they are able to damage his contemporaries. All they have to do is just endure long enough till he goes down. The fight ends pretty quickly if they use their awakenings though. Whitebeard isn't tanking multiple shock willies or damn punks. If he tries to attack with a powerful Quake, we know Law can just clash against it, and it gives Kid an opportunity to go for a strike. The odds for the match are really stacked against Whitebeard, so the possibility of Law and Kid getting the W is fairly high in my opinion. Now moving on to Kaidou, I'd say this match is extremely time sensitive. In my opinion, I believe the duo post-Wano Kid and Law, while fresh, can handle Kaidou in his base form, his dragon form, and his sober hybrid form, based on how they did on the roof in weaker conditions. As I said earlier, Kid and Law were not fresh when they engaged Big Mom, and both of them have grown stronger since Wano. To break it down, despite being drastically weakened, Law was able to use his awakening 4 times in the battle against Big Mom, 2 shock wills, a puncture will, and reroom. But against Blackbeard, Law spammed his awakening 3 times off rip and showed no signs of fatigue. And as for Kid, he used his awakening Assign twice in the battle against Big Mom and shot 2 blasts of his damn punk attack. But we see against Shanks that Kid was capable of shooting out 9 damn punks in rapid succession, wiping out Shanks' entire fleet and having the red-haired emperor himself state that the damage Kid was going to cause was too severe. I personally believe that the only way Kid and Law pull a win here is to land their awakenings on Kaidou multiple times and as fast as possible. And a key factor here will be Kid using Assign and Law using Shambles. We know from Roof Piece that Shambles can't be used on Kaidou and Big Mom themselves, but their items can still be affected. It's going to be extremely crucial that Kid uses Assign on Kaidou. Holding him down would be a bonus, but the main objective here would be getting rid of Kaidou's club. Because when against Big Mom, Kid turning her into a magnet with Assign caused her blade Napoleon to become stuck to her. Doing this to Kaidou would be pretty detrimental to him, since we've seen multiple times in the story how characters perform worse when they aren't using their preferred weapons, restricting their fighting styles. And it may be possible that Assign lasts longer while Kid is fresh. We know this because Kid's hold on his powers fluctuate when he takes on more damage. I know some might say Kaidou's Haki would just negate the effects, but that just isn't the case. We know for a fact that Big Mom's Conqueror's Haki was active during the fight against Kid and Law, and yet she wasn't able to negate any awakened abilities used against her. Not to mention Law and Kid were able to use a bunch of their base abilities against Kaidou and Big Mom. The only power that got negated was Shambles being used directly on them. It's also very important to mention as well that after getting hit by 1 round of their awakened attacks, Big Mom literally had to burn away 1 year of her lifespan to power herself up, and states that any less than that would be meaningless, going so far as to say that no one has been able to hurt her like this in decades, and says it's impressive. She literally states she's tired from fighting against Kid and Law, so again, I don't understand why people downplay the two of them. A lot of people want to bring up Conqueror's Haki, but don't want to ever open their mouths about near-death Kinemon surviving a Conqueror's Haki strike from Kaidou, or Zoro with 30 broken bones also surviving Thunder Bagua alongside Law after he had already briefly held back the strongest Conqueror's Haki attack to date. That is canon. As far as I'm concerned, if Big Mom says she's using her full strength and is growing tired from the battle while literally wheezing on panel, then she is. End of story. If stronger versions of Kid and Law can pile on their awakenings quickly onto Kaidou, they could win. No one in the verse is taking 9 damn punks and multiple shock wills while restrained, outside of the Gurusei and their healing factors. However, as I said, this battle is extremely time sensitive because if Kaidou is able to drink from his gourd and become drunk, the fight is over. It's flat out stated Kaidou grows stronger after getting drunk, and all his drunk modes give him serious firepower and versatility. Kaidou would have reached a level that Kid and Law won't be able to contend with, in my opinion. The only counter to prevent this from happening is Law shambling away the gourd before Kaidou can drink from it. We know objects not imbued with their Haki can be shambled away, so this is indeed possible. Again, I'm not stating anything to be fact, we are just exploring the possibility of how they could possibly win. No matter what though, this is going to be extremely difficult, whoever you think wins. Now, against everyone's favorite rubber MC, it truly depends on how seriously Luffy takes this fight. We have seen Luffy get temporarily knocked out by the likes of Apu, Luffy was caught lacking by Kaidou on the roof and got knocked out twice, and Luffy was taken out against Kizaru while using Snake Man. Am I saying that Kid and Law are comparable individually to Kaidou and Kizaru? No, not at all. Do not twist my words, please. It's more so highlighting that Luffy, after getting Gear 5 and Conqueror's Haki, is not an invincible monster and shouldn't be put on a pedestal like a portion of the fan base has done. Especially when we all know he's going to get vastly stronger later in the story. If Luffy were to be at his best right now in the story, that is not good for any future fights against any other top tiers later on. Luffy's mental state in the fight is extremely important because he could easily bulldoze over Kid and Law quickly from the get-go if he uses Gear 5 and his Conqueror's Haki at their max output. But we've seen several times since Wano that Luffy doesn't do that and will play around with his food, such as in the case with Lucci, where he flat out doesn't use his Conqueror's Haki and is just messing around in Gear 5, as well as not using it or Gear 5 against the Seraphim, and how he started the fight with Kizaru in base and was visibly struggling and growing tired against Kizaru when in Snake Man. If Luffy does not treat this fight dead seriously, either Kid and Law's awakenings will spell trouble for him. Law's awakening will jack up Luffy's internal organs and bones, and Kid using Assign could hold down Luffy. Keep in mind, Assign from Kid does not need direct contact, so both Kid and Luffy being brawlers will fight up close and personal, allowing for Kid to land the technique. The only way I see Luffy getting past Assign is if he uses Gear 5 to manipulate the environment around him to fight, similar to how he fought against Lucci. His other forms do not give him such advantages, but regardless, his movements can be restricted. and all it takes is a single shock will to do solid damage. Another angle for this fight is that Law during Roof Piece has shown the ability to teleport multiple times in quick succession and has saved Luffy, Zoro, and Kid several times with his teleportation, as well as set up Luffy, Zoro, and Kid for their own attacks and counters. All it takes is one good hit from a well-placed damn punk for Luffy to take solid damage, and it is entirely in character for Law to set up his teammates in battle. Likewise, he could also set up Kid to land a sign, which again would restrict Luffy's movements. Let me remind everyone again that the Supernova during Roof Piece were able to do damage against Kaidou while either holding back or before they had their new powers unlocked. So saying stronger versions of Kid and Law in better condition wouldn't be able to hurt Luffy is disingenuous. Not to mention that Kid and Law have taken a large amount of named attacks from Big Mom in base and in her Soul Focus form. I'm not saying they're going to walk off every attack Luffy launches against them, but acting like they wouldn't be able to get up from any attack Luffy uses is very disingenuous in my opinion. And obviously, Luffy has high endurance, but his stamina is terrible when in a serious matchup. If Luffy sustains too much damage and doesn't take out Kid and Law before he reaches his limit in Gear 5, this fight ends in their victory. Just like with the Kaidou fight though, I see this being extremely difficult for the duo, with the deciding factor being how will Luffy act during the battle. So when it comes to Shanks, I'm going to be extremely blunt. I don't see a way for Kid and Law to achieve victory here. Based on what information we currently have, unlike the other Yonko, Shanks goes for the throat immediately. There is no holding back or taking a long time to use their strongest forms. Big Mom, Kaidou, and Luffy are all guilty of this. There are no underestimations of their opponent or playing around when they could end the fight quickly. Again, Big Mom, Kaidou, and Luffy are all guilty of this. It's a fact that Shanks used Advanced Observation and Advanced Conqueror's Haki off-rip against Kid, two of the strongest abilities in the verse. It's possible he used Advanced Armament as well, but at the bare minimum, he used the other two for sure. Unlike the rest of his crew, Shanks did not underestimate Kid's abilities at all. He saw the amount of destruction Kid was capable of dishing out and put him down quickly to prevent the complete obliteration of his entire fleet. Remember, it took Kaidou forever to bust out Future Sight after getting drunk, something that could have easily helped him dodge attacks like Zoro's Ashura Slash for example. Shanks does not play games. I think at the very least, if Kid and Law were able to react to Shanks, they might stand a chance since Shanks is just a guy. What I mean by this is Shanks does not have the same kinds of natural and augmented durability that Kaidou or Big Mom have in their base and amplified forms. Kid and Law's Awakenings would do solid damage to Shanks if their attacks landed, but because Shanks doesn't play with his food, the fight will end swiftly in his favor. Just to clarify again, we are using the Blackbeard we know about currently in the story, which is Blackbeard fighting against Law during Egghead. As I mentioned in Rule 4, it's entirely possible for Blackbeard to grow stronger later in the story, so I don't want to hear any talks about me downplaying Teach. And in the case of Blackbeard, it is actually fairly interesting because in my opinion, I think he suffers greatly in a 2v1 scenario. First of all, we know that against Law, Blackbeard underestimated Law and thought he could prepare beforehand by taking to the skies riding on Stronger to stay out of his range, just to immediately be caught lacking by Law using Reroom. This, as well as Blackbeard flat out stating that he knew either Law, Luffy, or Kid would arrive to Winter Island, shows that he at least has a base understanding of the trio's capabilities. Blackbeard not anticipating Law's Reroom or Shock Will tells us off-rip that he has no idea about the capabilities of Luffy's Gear 5 or Kid's Assign and Damn Punk. This fact puts Blackbeard in a terrible pincher position. As we saw in the actual fight, Blackbeard took so much damage from one Shock Will that it either temporarily stunned him or temporarily knocked him out, depending on your interpretation since Blackbeard has whitened out eyes after the attack lands. Regardless, Shock Will landing was a lot of damage for Blackbeard to take all at once. We know that Blackbeard can counter with his Quick Fruit, but there lies the problem. Kid's presence in this fight changes things dramatically, because if Blackbeard uses his Quicks to hold off Law's Awakening and tries to use Black Vortex to counter him, he is left wide open for Kid to fire off a Damn Punk at him. And the reverse could be true as well, with Blackbeard using his Black Hole to suck in Kid and going in for a strike with his Quakes just to get hit by an attack from Law. And although Blackbeard has amazing endurance, I doubt he has the same durability as Big Mom in her Soul Focus form. Big Mom, after having 2 Shock Wills land on her, destroyed multiple ribs and her arm. Against Puncture Will, she was left completely immobilized, allowing for Kid to shoot her twice with Damn Punk. And unlike Big Mom, Blackbeard doesn't have a way to recover from the damage. It's also worth mentioning as well that since they are fighting as a duo, Law has more opportunities to protect and set up Kid via his teleportation. Blackbeard could use Black Hole to try and suck up the surrounding scrap metal Kid has around him, but Kid could still use Assign to restrain Blackbeard. Also, if he uses Black Vortex on Kid, Kid could still shoot off his blast at Blackbeard, similarly to Ace with his Fire Lances. No matter what though, he's still left wide open for an attack. If he doesn't counter with his Quakes, he'll get hit by Kid's attack. If he does counter with his Quakes, he can get hit by Law. And at the end of the day, Law can save Kid from being sucked up via his teleportation. It will be a difficult fight because it is Blackbeard we're talking about here, but Kid and Law working together definitely puts Blackbeard on the back foot, and he can't afford at all to take multiple strikes from them, or he will eventually wear down and fall to the dysfunctional duo. And that pretty much wraps things up. And I know what some of you were thinking, why didn't I talk about Buggy? He's a Yonko too. And just like Oda said, this is a matter of reading comprehension. We all know Buggy one-shots Kid and Law worse than what Shanks could ever pull off. All jokes aside though, thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more content if you like what you saw. I hope you have a good day, and please stay safe. Peace.